The lock clicked, the door cracked open, and the first sound I heard was my husband's voice, a voice I thought I knew better than my own. But he wasn't talking to me. He was talking about me, in a cold, calculating tone that froze the air. And then he said her name, and I knew the last 7 years of my life weren't just a marriage. They were a performance. My name is Eliza. I am 38 years old, and until this morning, I was a successful architect, a partner, a wife. Now, I am just a woman standing in her own foyer, listening to her world end. It started with the keys. I was halfway to O'Hare, my presentation for the Denver project running through my head, when I felt the familiar, sickening lurch. My office safe keys, not in my bag. I'd left them in the small ceramic bowl by the front door, a stupid habit I could never break. I cursed, pulled a U-turn that was probably illegal, and sped back to our Lincoln Park brownstone. The flight wasn't for another 2 hours, but Marcus had been insistent this morning, unusually so, pushing me out the door. "Traffic is going to be terrible, love. You should go now." I'd kissed him goodbye, grateful for his efficiency. I let myself in, the heavy oak door whispering shut behind me. The house was silent, just as I'd left it. I moved toward the hall table, my eyes fixed on the small, glittering pile of brass. And that's when I heard it. Marcus's voice. He was supposed to be at a meeting downtown. He was upstairs, in his office, the one that overlooked the garden. He was on the phone. I froze, one hand outstretched for the keys. It wasn't his voice that stopped me. It was his tone. I knew his client voice, brisk and charming. I knew his friend voice, warm and quick to laugh. I knew his husband voice, the one reserved for me, soft and intimate. This was none of those. This was intimate, yes, but in a way that felt foreign. It was low, confident, and threaded with something I could only describe as cold calculation. It was the voice of a stranger, and it was coming from my husband, and it made the skin on my arms prickle. "She's completely preoccupied with the presentation," he said, and the casual, dismissive way he said "she" made my stomach clench. I was she. "The final transfer is all that matters," he continued, and his voice dropped even lower. "We're liquidating the last of the fund's assets today." A prickle of confusion. Our personal assets. We'd just reviewed them. And then he said the names, and the floor fell away. "Don't worry, Chloe. Eliza is completely trusting. She's on her way to Denver right now. We'll have everything by Friday. Chloe." The name hung in the air, a physical thing that struck me in the chest. A wave of nausea, hot and acidic, rose in my throat. An affair, the oldest, most pathetic cliché. My husband was having an affair. The man I had loved for 7 years, the man who held me last night, was on the phone with his mistress. But the second shock followed the first so quickly I almost couldn't separate them. My brain, the architect's brain that lives on details, snagged on the other words. The fund. Liquidating the assets. There was only one fund in our lives. Not our joint account. Not our retirement. The Barrett Foundation. My father's legacy. The community center I had built from the ground up, pouring my grief and my inheritance into its foundation after my father died. The place that served 300 kids in the neighborhood. The place I had, stupidly, blindly, put Marcus in charge of managing financially. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was robbing me. He was robbing my father's memory. He was stealing the entire endowment. This morning, his rush to get me to the airport. "Go now, Eliza. Call me when you land." He hadn't been helpful. He had been ensuring his alibi. He needed me on a plane. He needed me out of state while he and this Chloe gutted my life. He needed his 72 hours. My hand, which had been reaching for the keys, closed around them. The metal was cold, and the sharp edges bit into my palm. The pain was grounding. I didn't breathe. I listened as he said a few more words. Dubai. A new life. She'll never even know what hit her, but it was just noise. The damage was done. The truth was laid bare on the hardwood floor between us. My feet, of their own accord, began to move. Not up the stairs to confront him, not into the kitchen to shatter. Backwards. I was a ghost in my own home. I lifted my heel, placing my weight on the ball of my foot, silencing the creak of the floorboards I knew was coming. I was an architect. I knew the structural weaknesses of this house, and I was suddenly, terrifyingly aware of the structural weaknesses of my marriage. My hand found the doorknob. I turned it, slowly, the mechanism oiled and silent. I pulled the heavy door toward me, creating a space just large enough to slip through. I stood on the front steps, the door clicking shut with a terrible, final softness. The Chicago wind whipped my hair across my face, but I felt nothing. I looked down at my hand. The keys were still there, clutched so tightly they had left deep indentations in my skin. I came back for my keys, but I had found something else entirely. The presentation in Denver was gone. The woman who was worried about a flight was gone. There was only this cold, hard, terrible clarity. And I knew, with an architect's certainty, that I was not getting on a plane to Denver. I was going to war. I didn't drive to the airport. I don't even remember getting in my car. I just ended up in the concrete cavern of a parking garage at a hotel in the Loop, the name of which I couldn't tell you. I just sat for a minute. The keys, the ones I'd gone back for, still biting into my hand. My mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, refused to accept what I'd heard. It fled, backward, to a warmer time. It fled to Perfect Marcus. We met at a fundraiser, the annual Children's Guild Gala, a sea of black ties and sequins. I was only there because Aperture Design Guild, my firm, had sponsored a table. I was 6 months out from my father's funeral, buried in probate and blueprints, and I felt hollowed out. And then I saw him. He wasn't the loudest man in the room, but he held its center. He was a nonprofit finance manager, introduced to me as a miracle worker who could make any charity solvent. He had this way of listening, a focused intensity that made you feel like you were the only person in a room of 500. He didn't just hear my words. He seemed to understand the grief behind them. He talked about legacy, about making a difference, not just with steel and glass, but with people. After my father died, I was drowning. My company, Aperture Design Guild, was demanding every ounce of my focus. But my father's passion project, the Barrett Foundation, had become my anchor. It was also an administrative nightmare I was not equipped to handle. I'm an architect. I build things. I don't understand endowments or tax-exempt bonds. Marcus saved me. After our third date, I'd confessed my fears over wine, terrified I was going to fail my father's legacy. He'd simply taken my hand. "Let me help," he'd said, his voice that perfect blend of confidence and compassion. "This is what I do, Eliza. Let me take this burden from you. You focus on building. Let me focus on funding." He volunteered to manage the foundation's finances, pro bono, a gesture of pure love. I'd thought. I remember the day I signed the papers that gave him power of attorney over the accounts. We were in our kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window. I felt a profound sense of relief, a gratitude so deep it almost made me cry. I had been given this perfect partner who not only supported my career, but actively took on my burdens as his own. He was my shelter. Our life was a perfectly constructed facade, and I was its chief designer. We had the beautiful house in Lincoln Park. We hosted the right dinner parties, donated to the right causes. We took trips to Italy. He was endlessly, unfailingly supportive of my work, boasting to friends about my latest project. When I won the municipal contract for the new library, he'd framed the article. He was the perfect modern husband. Every memory, every laugh, every "I love you" was now a lie. I sat in the cold car, the smell of concrete and exhaust filling my lungs, and replayed our last few weeks. It was all there. I'd just been too blind, too trusting to see it. Just last month, he'd brought me a stack of papers. "It's a major financial restructuring for the foundation. Love," he'd said, already turning to refill his coffee. "We're moving some assets around to maximize efficiency. Just a lot of boring paperwork." I'd been on a deadline, my desk covered in schematics for the Denver project. "Do I need to read all this?" He'd laughed, that warm, easy laugh that always put me at ease. "Only if you're having trouble sleeping. It's just leveraging some underutilized assets. Standard procedure, just sign here and here." I'd signed without reading a single line. I had trusted him completely. That trust was not a gift. It was a weapon. It was a tool he had carefully, patiently, sharpened for 7 years. He had studied me, learned my weaknesses, my grief, my dedication to my work, my blind faith in the goodness of people. He had seen the fault lines in my foundation and knew exactly where to place the charges. This wasn't a betrayal. A betrayal is passionate, impulsive. A betrayal is human. This was a demolition. This was a long con, a meticulously planned heist. He hadn't just fallen in love with another woman. He had targeted me. I wasn't his wife. I was his mark. I was the woman he was talking about on the phone, the one who was completely trusting. The warmth of my memories curdled, turning to acidic, icy rage. I wasn't just heartbroken. I wasn't just cheated on. I was prey. And I had just heard the hunter calmly discussing how he was going to dispose of the body. The paralysis of the parking garage lasted exactly 4 minutes. Then, the architect in my head, the woman I'd become after my father's death, the one who designed skyscrapers that withstood wind shear, took over. Grief was a luxury. Shock was a liability. Action was the only thing that mattered. I didn't drive to O'Hare. I drove downtown, to a luxury hotel in the Loop, one I knew Marcus found cold and impersonal. I walked to the registration desk, my spine rigid. My voice was a monotone, a stranger's voice. Reservation for Anne Harding. I'd invented her on the drive over. She was my cover. I paid the 3-night deposit in cash, a thick roll I kept in my car's console for site emergencies. This was the ultimate site emergency. The room was sterile, anonymous, and high above the city. It was perfect. I didn't look at the view. I didn't take off my coat. I sat on the hard, fashionable chair by the window. My mind began to sketch. I wasn't designing a building. I was designing a counter-operation. Every con has a blueprint. Every lie has a load-bearing wall. Marcus's entire plan rested on a single structural assumption. My absence. He believed I was in Denver, stressed about a presentation. He believed he had time. He thought he had 72 hours until Friday. That was his flaw. He had given me his timeline. My personal phone, the one he had called me on this morning, felt toxic in my hand. It was a tracking device. It was a leash. I made my first call. Liam, my assistant at Aperture. He was loyal to me, not to my marriage. "Eliza, I thought you were in the air." I pitched my voice to the edge of panic, a performance I didn't know I was capable of. "Liam, it's a nightmare. The flight was canceled. A complete mess at the gate. They're saying mechanical issues." I raked my nails on the hotel desk to create a scratching, chaotic sound. "My battery is at 2%. I'm trying to reroute, but this is going to take hours. I'm going to be completely dark. What about the presentation, should I—" "No," I snapped. "Tell the Denver team I'm in transit. Tell them I am unreachable until I check into the hotel." Unreachable. Liam. I'll email them when I land. Only email. Do you understand? Yes, of course, Eliza. Good luck. I hung up. I pulled the battery from my personal phone. The screen died, and with it, Eliza, the loving wife. I threw it into the dark recesses of the hotel room safe. I left the hotel, walking 3 blocks in the biting Chicago wind, and bought a cheap, prepaid burner phone from a convenience store. Cash. Back in the room. I plugged it in and dialed a number I knew better than my own social security number. She answered on the first ring. Grace. You're not on a plane, Grace said. It wasn't a question. I need you. Now. The Langham. Room 2204. Use the name Ann Harding if they stop you. What's wrong? It's Marcus, I said, and the name tasted like ash. There was a heavy silence. Grace, a forensic accountant who spent her days hunting for ghosts in spreadsheets, had never liked him. She'd always said he was too clean. I'd called her cynical. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. Tell me one more thing. What? Did you bring your laptop? No, I left everything. Good, she said. That means he can't access it. Don't connect to the hotel Wi-Fi. Don't do anything. I'm bringing my kit. She hung up. When she arrived, she wasn't carrying a purse. She was carrying a heavy-duty Pelican case. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She walked past me, set the case on the desk, and began unpacking. Laptops, tangled cables, several external hard drives, and a device I didn't recognize. She immediately began scanning the room for listening devices. How bad? She asked, already jacking her laptop into the hardline Ethernet port, bypassing the Wi-Fi. I gave her the blueprint of my discovery, the keys, the voice, the tone. Chloe, liquidating the fund. Friday, Dubai. Grace didn't flinch. She just typed, her fingers moving with a terrifying, furious speed. She looked at me, her eyes cold. He's been cheating. Fine. People are animals. But the foundation, your father's foundation. He's emptying it, I whispered, the words finally landing with their full weight. No, he's not, Grace said, her voice dropping. Not all of it. Not yet. She spun the laptop screen toward me. She was already inside the foundation's servers. He's been building a firewall, hiding his movements, but he's an amateur. He's a finance guy, not a tech guy. He built his walls strong, but he put the goddamn door in plain sight. The sterile hotel room was no longer a refuge. It was a war room. He thinks he has 3 days, I said, the hoarseness in my voice replaced by something else, something metallic. Grace looked up, a grim smile playing on her lips. 72 hours. He's a fool. He gave us a deadline. She cracked her knuckles, a sound like a gavel. Let's see the real blueprints of this bastard's life. The clicks of Grace's keys were sharp, like small bones breaking. For an hour, I just watched as the digital ghost of my marriage was flayed, layer by layer. The woman I was the wife, the partner, the fool died in that sterile hotel room. The architect, the builder, the one who understood that a foundation must be sound, was the only one left. He's been bleeding you, Grace muttered, her eyes scanning lines of code. Not in big chunks. That's for amateurs. This is systematic. Hundreds of small transfers over 5 years. Administrative expenses. Consulting fees. Vendor payments. All to the same place. Where? My voice was a croak. A shell corporation. Viridian Trust. Registered in Delaware, of course. Viridian. Green. The color of my father's foundation logo. The color of greed. The sheer, bald-faced arrogance of it made my stomach heave. And guess who the sole proprietor of Viridian Trust is? Grace continued, her fingers flying. Not Marcus Barrett. The owner, the only signatory, is Chloe Annabelle. Chloe, I said. The name was a physical thing, something I wanted to spit out. She's not just the mistress, Eliza. She's the bank. Grace's voice was cold. He's been funneling your father's legacy directly into his girlfriend's pocket. He's been doing it for years. Grace paused. Eliza, what did he tell you about his past before you? He was from Michigan, I recited, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. He was an orphan. put himself through business school. He was self-made. He's self-made, all right, Grace said. She spun her laptop around. Marcus Barrett, as we know him, didn't exist until 8 years ago. His social security number was issued then. I stared at the screen, not understanding. I ran his digital footprint, his IP signatures, against criminal databases. Grace said, "Your husband, the man you married 7 years ago, isn't Marcus Barrett." My breath hitched. "His name is Leo Vance," she said, her voice quiet. "He was indicted in Wisconsin 9 years ago. Embezzlement. He ran a scam on a dozen retirees, drained their pension funds. He was sentenced to 5 years, got out in 3 for good behavior." The gala, the fundraiser, the charming, compassionate man who had listened to my grief. He wasn't a savior. He was a predator, fresh from a cage, looking for his next meal. I wasn't his wife. I was his mark. "Who is she?" I demanded, the numbness giving way to a cold pinpoint of rage. "Who is Chloe?" "Let's see." Grace typed the name. "Well, she's not hiding." The screen filled with her life. Chloe Annabelle, a high-end luxury real estate agent based in Scottsdale, Arizona. Her social media was a public ledger of his theft. Photos of her smiling in front of million-dollar desert mansions. A picture from 2 weeks ago, on a yacht in the Mediterranean. A new watch on her wrist. The caption read, "Hard work finally paying off." "That's the foundation's money," I whispered. "The money for the after-school arts program. The money for the senior literacy classes. It was on her wrist. It was paying for that boat. Eliza." Grace's voice was suddenly sharp, pulling me from the images. She had moved from the shell company back to the foundation's main servers. "Eliza, the siphoning, that was just his nest egg. The real plan is happening right now." She pointed to the screen. It was a stack of loan documents. "He's leveraged the building," she said. "He used the foundation's physical headquarters, your father's building, as collateral." "The restructuring," I whispered, the memory of me signing those papers, distracted and grateful, burning me alive. "He said it was to maximize efficiency." "He's taken out millions in personal loans," Grace said, her face grim. "He's been using the money to feed the Viridian account, to pay for all this." She gestured to Chloe's smiling face. "But he's not done." She clicked on a new file, a pending wire order. "This is it," she said. "This is the kill shot. It's scheduled for 48 hours from now, this Friday." I looked. It was a single transaction, the final liquidation of the foundation's entire primary endowment, a figure so large it didn't seem real. This was the money he and Chloe were taking to Dubai. "Once this transfer is approved, the foundation is finished," Grace said. "It's an empty shell, mortgaged to the hilt, but it gets worse." She pointed to the fine print on the loan agreement. "He's tied the loans to the endowment. The second the endowment is transferred, the loans are in default. The bank won't just freeze the accounts. Eliza, they will seize the building. He wasn't just taking the money. He was taking the walls. He was taking the bricks my father had laid, the halls filled with children. He was leaving nothing, not a dollar, not a memory, just a plot of land and a mountain of debt. 48 hours. The clock was no longer a comfort. It was a bomb. As Grace and I stared at the pending wire transfer, that digital guillotine poised over my father's legacy, a sound ripped through the sterile silence of the room. A buzz, a vibration. It wasn't the burner phone. It was coming from the hotel safe. My heart stopped. It was my old phone, the one I'd thrown in there. Marcus. He was checking on me. The thought of his voice, of his name on the screen, sent a wave of bile up my throat. "Don't," Grace said, her eyes fixed on her screen. "Don't answer. Not yet. What's the timeline?" "My flight," I stammered, my mind racing. "It would have landed about 30 minutes ago." "So you're at the hotel?" Grace said, her voice flat. You're tired. You're stressed. You're Eliza, the dutiful, focused wife. You wait exactly 30 minutes, not a second sooner. Let him wonder. It was the longest 30 minutes of my life. I watched the clock on the burner phone. Each minute was an agony of anticipation. Grace worked silently, her face illuminated by the glow of the data she was sifting through. I just sat, my hands clenched into fists, rehearsing. At precisely 31 minutes, I retrieved the phone from the safe. My hands were slick with sweat. There it was, a text from Marcus' husband. My stomach twisted. Landed safe in Denver. Love. I stared at the love. That simple 4-letter word that was now a weapon. I typed, my thumbs clumsy. Just got to the hotel. Exhausted big presentation tomorrow. We'll call you later. I used the exclamation point. It was the kind of breathless, slightly stressed punctuation I would normally use. It was a performance. I hit send. The phone rang in my hand almost immediately. I yelped, nearly dropping it. His name flashed on the screen. He was calling. He wasn't satisfied with a text. He needed to hear my voice. He needed to confirm his alibi was secure. I can't, I whispered, staring at the screen. Yes, you can, Grace said, not looking up. You are an architect. You are a performer. You are in a Denver hotel room and the signal is bad. Go. I swiped to answer. My heart was a drum against my ribs. Hello. Eliza. Hey, you made it. His voice, that warm, familiar, intimate voice that I had woken up to for 7 years, that voice I'd heard in the foyer just hours ago, cold and calculating. The dissonance was terrifying. It was the voice of the man who had loved me. It was the voice of the man who was robbing me blind. Hey, I said, my voice thin. You sound tired. Is everything okay with the room? It's fine. I couldn't do it. The lie was too big. I needed an escape. I lunged for the hotel bathroom, my hand fumbling for the handle. Eliza, you there. I grabbed the handle on the toilet and flushed. The roar of the water was a sudden, violent, beautiful sound. Marcus, I yelled over the noise, pitching my voice high with false frustration. The signal in here is awful. I can barely hear you. Oh, he said, and I could hear the slight disappointment. He'd wanted to talk. Okay. Love, just wanted to hear your voice. I know it's so annoying. Listen, my battery is dying and I have to get this presentation ready. I'll just text you later. Okay. Love you. I said it. The words love you came out of my mouth, a poisoned dart. Love you too, he said. Good luck tomorrow. Knock 'em dead. I hung up before he could say another word. My hand was shaking so violently I couldn't hold the phone. It clattered against the marble sink. I leaned over, bracing myself, and retched. Nothing came up but acidic, hot bile. The disgust was a physical thing, a creature living in my throat. I had just lied to my husband to help him feel secure in his plan to destroy me. I splashed cold water on my face, my reflection a stranger's. A pale, hollow-eyed woman stared back. I walked back into the main room. Grace had a glass from the minibar waiting for me. It was whiskey. I took it and drank it in one shuddering gulp. The burn was a welcome, honest pain. You did good, she said quietly. He bought it. He thinks he's safe. He'll be comfortable and stupid for the next 48 hours. She turned back to her screen. Now, it's my turn. I sat on the edge of the bed, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me cold. I looked at the image of Chloe, still frozen on Grace's second monitor. The smiling, Scottsdale real estate agent. She's not just a mistress, I said, the realization settling like a stone. He's using her to move the money. She's his partner. She's his exit strategy. Grace corrected me, her voice grim. She clicked, opening a new window. It was his email. He hadn't just been sloppy with the foundation's servers. He'd been arrogant, using the same password for everything. "I've been scanning his sent items," Grace said. "Looking for Dubai. Here it is. Sent 2 days ago, to Chloe." She highlighted the text and read it aloud, her voice a monotone that made the words even more brutal. "It's done. The final transfer is set for Friday. After this is done, we're flying to Dubai. Eliza will never find us." The words hung in the air. Never find us. He wasn't just leaving me, he was erasing me. He was going to vanish, leaving me in the wreckage of his crimes. The whiskey in my stomach felt like it was turning to ice. He didn't just want my money. He wanted me gone, a ghost left to haunt a building the bank was about to chain. Grace continued to dig, but I couldn't sit in that room anymore. I couldn't just stare at spreadsheets and wire transfers. The numbers were cold, but the crime was human, and I needed to see the victims. I needed to see what I was fighting for. I left the hotel and went to a drugstore. I bought a cheap, mousy brown wig, the kind that looks like straw, and a pair of oversized, non-prescription glasses with thick plastic frames. I bundled my own hair up, tucked it under the itchy cap, and put on the glasses. In the reflection of the store window, Eliza was gone. I was just a drab, forgettable woman, someone you'd pass on the street without a second glance. It was the perfect armor. I took a cab, not to the foundation, but to a coffee shop 3 blocks away. I walked the rest. The moment I turned the corner, the sound of the place hit me. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. The after-school program was in full swing. I could hear the squeak of sneakers on the gymnasium floor, the high, chaotic laughter of children. I pushed open the heavy glass doors. My father's name was etched into the glass. The Barrett Foundation, a place for community, a place for growth. I'd designed the renovation myself, ensuring every wall had a window. That light could reach every corner. It was exactly as my father had wanted. The main hall was buzzing. A dozen children, none older than 10, were hunched over a long table covered in newsprint, their hands and faces smeared with bright paint. In the glass-walled classroom to the left, the senior arts program was meeting. I saw Mr. Henderson, a man in his 80s who had lived in the neighborhood his whole life, frowning in concentration as he tried to shape a lump of wet clay on a wheel. This was his world. This was the legacy Marcus was liquidating for a trip to Dubai. I kept my head down, my fake hair-shrouded head, and moved toward the administrative offices. Mrs. Gable, the center's director, was at the front desk, sorting through a stack of mail. She was a woman who ran on coffee and sheer force of will, and she loved this place more than I did. She looked up, her face etched with the day's fatigue, but her eyes were kind. "Can I help you?" My voice came out higher, thinner. I was just looking for information," I stammered, the lie forming as I spoke. "For my sister's son, for the after-school program." "Oh, of course," she said, her smile warming, but the smile didn't quite erase the worry lines etched between her brows. She glanced down at a letter on her desk, its envelope thick and imposing. Is everything all right?" I asked, gesturing vaguely. She let out a short, frustrated sigh. "Oh, it's just bureaucracy. I'm sure." She seemed to need to unburden herself, even to a stranger. "We've been getting these notices," she tapped the letter, "from the bank. The strangest things. They keep sending these. Well, they look like foreclosure notices." The air in my lungs turned to ice. Grace's voice. "He leveraged the building." Mrs. Gable laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. "Can you imagine foreclosure?" "On this building, it's absurd. I was in a complete panic. I can tell you, I called Mr. Marcus right away." I gripped the strap of my purse, my knuckles white. "You did?" "Oh, yes," she said, her face relaxing into a look of profound relief. "And thank goodness I did. He was wonderful." He laughed. "Actually, He said it was just some massive administrative error, a crossed wire at the bank. He said they probably mixed up our paperwork with some other property. She beamed, a testament to my husband's performance. He said he would handle it. He told me not to worry my head about it for one more second. He said he'd take care of everything. He would handle it. The words echoed in the space where my heart used to be. He would handle it. He would let this good woman, this pillar of the community, operate under the belief that he was her savior, all while he was the one holding the match. He wasn't just stealing the money. He was letting the bank seize the building. It was his masterpiece, the perfect crime. He doesn't just take the money and run. He creates a scapegoat. The bank would be the villain. The bank would foreclose. The community would be outraged. But they would be outraged at the cold, faceless corporation, not the charming, helpful Mr. Marcus, who had simply been overwhelmed by their administrative error. He would be gone, and I would be left in the rubble, the negligent wife who let her father's legacy crumble. I looked past Mrs. Gable, at the kids still painting. One little girl was holding up her paper, a swirl of green and yellow, beaming. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about my marriage, or the 7 years I had wasted. This wasn't about the money, or the betrayal. This was about them. He was stealing their tables, their paint, their clay. He was stealing the one safe place they had. The hot, sickening grief I had felt in the hotel room vanished. It didn't cool. It was incinerated. And in its place, something cold and hard and structural settled into my spine. My father had been a builder. I was an architect. We built things to last. The rage was gone, and in its place was a resolve so cold and so absolute it terrified me. This was not about revenge anymore. This was about justice. This was about the foundation. And I would tear down the man who had tried to destroy it, brick by fraudulent brick. I didn't go back to the hotel. I went back to my own firm. The wig and glasses went into a trash can in an alley. When I walked through the glass doors of Aperture Design Guild, I was no longer Anne Harding, the drab woman, or Eliza Barrett, the grieving wife. I was Eliza, the CEO. I didn't call Arthur Harding. I walked into his office, high in a steel and glass tower that I had helped design. At 5 p.m., Grace was right behind me, carrying her secure hard drive. Harding was not my divorce attorney. He was not a man you called for personal matters. He was Aperture's corporate counsel, a man whose ruthlessness in contract law was legendary. He was paid to find weaknesses and destroy them. We sat in his sterile conference room, the Chicago skyline turning purple behind him. He steepled his fingers, his face unreadable. "Eliza, this is unexpected. I thought you were in Denver." "My plans changed," I said. My voice was as cold as the glass in the window. "I'm not here as a client. Arthur, I'm here as a victim of a federal crime." I didn't cry. I didn't present feelings. I presented data. For the past 7 years, I have been married to a man who calls himself Marcus Barrett. His real name is Leo Vance. He is an embezzler, paroled from a Wisconsin prison 3 months before he met me. Grace plugged her drive into his secure projection system. I gave him the blueprint, the Shell Corporation, Viridian Trust, the sole proprietor, Chloe Annabelle. The systematic 5-year bleed from the Barrett Foundation, complete with dates, times, and routing numbers. I showed him the forged loan documents, the ones that mortgaged my father's building to the hilt. I showed him the foreclosure notices that Mrs. Gable thought were a mistake. And then I showed him the kill shot the pending wire transfer of the entire endowment, scheduled to clear in less than 48 hours. Harding was silent. He looked at the data. He looked at me. A muscle in his jaw twitched. He wasn't shocked by the betrayal. He was impressed by the preparation. "You've been thorough," he said. It was the highest praise he could offer. "This isn't a matrimonial dispute, Eliza. This is grand larceny, wire fraud, and racketeering. He didn't just marry you. He built a hostile takeover of your life. He didn't wait. He didn't schedule a meeting. He became a general commanding an army. He picked up his private phone. "Get me Judge Peterson's clerk," he snapped. "Tell him it's a Code 1 emergency injunction. I want a temporary restraining order on every asset tied to the Barrett Foundation. Now." He turned to Grace. "Give my team everything you have on Viridian Trust." The next hour was a blur of legal warfare. The fog of my grief was burned away by the clean, sharp fire of action. This was a world I understood. This was structural reinforcement. The 48-hour transfer. I asked, my voice tight. "Dead," Harding said, signing a motion. "We just filed the ex parte freeze. Nothing moves, not a single dollar. The Foundation's accounts are now in legal lockdown, pending a full fraud investigation." "The bank," I said, thinking of Mrs. Gable's worried face. "The foreclosure." "I've already spoken to their general counsel," Harding said, with a terrifying lack of emotion. "I informed them they were in possession of fraudulent notes, collateralized against a property by a convicted felon using a false identity. I provided them with Leo Vance's file. The foreclosure notices are void. The bank is no longer their predator. They are now, officially, his victim. They will be cooperative." "And Viridian Trust?" Grace asked. "My team is filing a RICO-based injunction in Delaware," Harding said. "That account will be frozen by morning. Whatever is in there is now locked in litigation." It was done. The walls were up. The assets were safe. The Foundation was secure. I felt a wave of relief so profound my knees almost buckled. "Thank you, Arthur." He held up a hand. "We are not finished." I frowned. "But the Foundation is safe." "The Foundation, yes," he said, his eyes cold. "But he wasn't just coming for your father's company. He was coming for yours." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Aperture. That's impossible. It's my firm. It's locked down in my name." "He has been very busy, Eliza," Harding said. He slid a single piece of paper across the vast mahogany table. His paralegal had pulled it from the state corporate filings an hour ago. "It was filed 3 weeks ago," Harding said. "An amendment to the Aperture Design Guild Partnership Agreement." My blood ran cold. I took the paper. My hands were perfectly steady. I read the complex legal language, but the intent was horrifyingly simple. It named Marcus Barrett as a majority partner, with full operational control and power of attorney over all assets. But it wasn't active. It was contingent. It was an amendment set to trigger automatically in the event. Harding read aloud, his voice flat and brutal. "Of the primary partners, that's you. Eliza medical incapacitation." Medical incapacitation. The room tilted. This wasn't just a plan to steal my money and run. This wasn't an exit strategy. This was an escalation. He had a mistress in Arizona, but he was filing paperwork to take over my Chicago firm. He wasn't just planning to leave me with nothing. He was planning to replace me. And he had a contingency in place for my incapacitation, a word that now hung in the air like a threat, cold and sharp and full of terrible meaning. The document from Harding's office changed everything. Medical incapacitation. The words echoed with a sinister finality. This was no longer just a heist. It was an erasure. My husband Leo wasn't just planning to leave. He was planning to take everything, including my company, and he had a contingency for my removal. I went back to the hotel, but not to rest. The legal firewall was built. The assets were frozen. Now, it was time to deal with the co-conspirator. "Where is she?" I asked Grace. "Chloe, the woman from Scottsdale." "Scottsdale is a front," Grace said, her eyes glued to a screen. "That's her territory, but she's not there. I've been tracking her. She used a credit card an hour ago, a credit card tied to Viridian Trust." "Where?" I demanded. "Downstairs," Grace said, her voice flat. "In the hotel bar." My blood went cold. "She's here in this hotel. Not this hotel. The one across the street. The Peninsula. She's in Chicago. Eliza. She's here for the payday. She's here to meet Marcus. Or Leo, whatever you want to call him. She was here, right across the street. While I was in a wig, seeing the victims, she was sipping a cocktail, waiting for my life to be wired into her account. The architect in me, the one who saw all the pieces, took over. She was the final, unsecured structural element. Harding's team froze the accounts, I said, thinking aloud. Viridian Trust is locked by now. That credit card. It's just a piece of plastic. She probably doesn't know it yet, Grace said. The injunction is fresh. Good. A plan was forming, cold and precise. I walked to the small desk, grabbing the hotel stationery and an envelope. I began to write. "What are you doing?" Grace asked. "I'm not going to let Harding's team just clean this up," I said. He was planning to incapacitate me. He was planning to frame me. I need to know what she knows. I put the wig back on, the itchy, mousy brown hair, the ugly glasses. I was Anne Harding again, but I felt a new persona emerging. This one was colder. She was Sarah, the private investigator. I went to the hotel's business center. I fed the pages from Grace's hard drive Leo Vance's real criminal record from Wisconsin, the embezzlement charges into the printer. I printed the articles of incorporation for Viridian Trust. I put them all in a crisp, legal-sized envelope. Half truth, half poison. "I'm going over there," I said to Grace. "Eliza, that's insane. Let the lawyers handle her." "The lawyers see her as a financial asset to be frozen," I said, my voice hard. "I see her as a witness, and right now, she's a witness who thinks she's about to be a millionaire. I'm the only one who can flip her." I crossed the street. The Peninsula lobby was a hushed cathedral of wealth. And there she was. I recognized her instantly from the photos. Chloe. She was at the bar, alone, a martini in front of her, her phone in her hand. She was blonde, sharp, and looked bored, like a predator waiting for its meal. She was wearing a new watch, the one from the boat photo, my father's money. I didn't hesitate. I slid onto the bar stool next to her. She glanced over, annoyed at the interruption, and then dismissed me. I was a frumpy, invisible woman. "Chloe Annabelle," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. "Do I know you?" "My name is Sarah," I said. "I'm a private investigator." Her posture tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I've been hired by a group of retirees in Wisconsin," I continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "You don't know them. They're not rich, or at least, they weren't, until their pension funds disappeared 9 years ago." Her face went pale. "They hired me to find the man who stole their money, a man named Leo Vance." Chloe stood up, grabbing her purse. "You're crazy." I slid the legal envelope onto the bar. "That's his sealed record. That's the wire fraud charge. And that," I said, tapping the last page, "is the Articles of Incorporation for Viridian Trust, with your name as sole proprietor." Her hand, the one with the watch, was frozen in mid-air. "Here's the situation, Chloe," I said, my voice dropping. "Leo is the target. The feds are already involved. They've been building a RICO case. He's going away for a very long time." I leaned in, a conspirator. "But they see you as one of two things. You're either his first witness or you're his co-defendant. And right now, with your name on this shell company, you're looking like the co-defendant." She was trapped. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to the envelope. The life in Dubai, the real estate empire, it was all vanishing. He told me. She stammered. "The arrogance gone. He told you that he loved you, that you'd be rich." I pushed the envelope toward her. "The Viridian Trust account was frozen by a federal judge an hour ago. That credit card in your hand, it's plastic." Panic. Pure, undiluted panic. She was a woman who had bet everything on a con, and she had just found out the game was over. He lied to me," she whispered. "He lies to everyone," I said. "That's what Leo does." He told me it was clean, she said, her voice rising. He told me she was the one who was dirty. He said he was finally getting out from under her. I froze. What did you say? Eliza, she spat the name. His wife. He said she'd been skimming from the foundation for years. He said he finally had the proof, that he was moving the last of the money to protect it, to keep it away from her, before he turned her in. The air left my lungs. The incapacitation document, the final move. It wasn't about me at all. Chloe was crying now, mascara running. He was going to expose her. He was going to show the board how she'd been stealing, and then he was going to leave. He was coming to me. He said we had to get to Dubai before she tried to stop him. I finally understood. I wasn't the wife he was leaving. I was the scapegoat. He wasn't just running away. He was planting a flag in my corpse. He was going to steal my father's money, frame me for the crime, destroy my reputation, and ride off into the sunset with his mistress, looking like the hero who had discovered the truth. He wasn't running from me. He was setting me on fire. I left Chloe in the bar, a collapsing ruin of her own ambition, and walked out into the Chicago night. The information she gave me was the final piece of the design. He wasn't just running. He was staging my demolition, planning to frame me, and leaving me buried in the rubble while he played the hero. I didn't go back to the hotel. I went home. Grace had confirmed he was out. He was at the foundation offices, likely planting the last bits of manufactured evidence against me. I let myself in, the click of the lock echoing in the silent foyer. It was the same door I had cracked open this morning. This morning. I was a wife. Tonight. I was the architect of his ruin. This house was my creation. I had specified every wire, every sensor, every access point. Marcus loved the smart home system. He loved showing it off to our friends, dimming the lights and raising the music with a tap on his phone. He thought it was his toy. He forgot I was the one who wrote the schematics. I went to the central control panel, hidden behind a blank service plate in the main floor utility closet. My hands were steady. I didn't need his password. I used the master installer code. The visual feeds for the main cameras, the ones in the foyer, the living room, and his study were a liability. I didn't disable them. I routed their cloud recording to a 30-minute loop, showing an empty, silent house. To his phone. Everything would look exactly as it should. But the audio, that was mine. I had specified high fidelity, voice-activated microphones in the main living spaces and in his study. I'd told him they were for the whole house voice command system. He never knew they could be activated for surveillance. I turned them on, routing the live feed directly to a secure app on my burner phone. The stage was set. Now. It was time to bait the trap. I retrieved my Denver phone from my coat pocket. My hands were freezing, but they did not shake. I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring, his voice a perfect simulation of concern. "Eliza, I thought you were in prep. Is everything okay?" I let my voice crack. I summoned the woman I was this morning, the one he had spent 7 years cultivating, the one he thought was weak. "Marcus," I whispered, and I let a small, broken sob catch in my throat. "Eliza, what's wrong? You sound terrible." "It was awful," I cried, the performance tasting like ash on my tongue. The presentation, I bombed it. I completely fell apart. I don't know what's wrong with me. "What?" he said. "Love, just breathe. It's just one presentation." His voice was tight. This was not in his plan. He needed me calm and distracted in Denver. "No, you don't understand." I pushed, letting the hysteria build. I think I'm sick. I feel dizzy. I could barely stand up. I'm coming home." "What?" "No, Eliza, you can't." The smoothness was gone. The command was sharp, cold. That was the real man. That was Leo. "What do you mean, I can't?" I said, playing the confused wife. "I'm at the airport. I bought a ticket. I just need to come home. I feel so awful. Marcus, I think, I think I need a doctor. I let that last phrase hang in the air. Medical incapacitation. Let him wonder. Don't. Move, he commanded. Stay at the hotel. I'll fly out to you. Tonight. Just stay put. No, I insisted, my voice a hysterical wail. No, I'm already at the gate. I'm boarding. I'll be home by 8. I just need to be home. I hung up on him before he could argue. The bait was in the water. I sat in the darkness of the utility closet, the glowing panel of the server rack illuminating my face. I opened the audio feed on my burner phone. Silence. 1 minute. 2. Then, the sound of the front door slamming open. He must have raced home from the foundation. I heard his frantic footsteps on the stairs, going to his study. Then, his voice, not smooth, not loving, but a raw, furious snarl. Pick up, pick up, pick up Chloe! I heard her voice, tinny and panicked. What did the card work? Mine didn't. Forget the card, he roared. She's coming back. The bitch is coming back. She's on a plane. She says she's sick. Sick. What does that mean, Leo? What does that mean? It means the plan is dead, he shouted. It means she'll be here before the transfer clears. We have to go. Tonight. Go where we don't have the money. We have the bonds, you idiot, he snarled. The bearer bonds in the safe. It's enough. Get to the house. Now. We have to go. Tonight. We are leaving in 1 hour. He hung up on her. The bearer bonds. The one asset Grace couldn't trace. The old money emergency fund my father had left, hidden in the floor safe in his study. The safe I had left my keys for this morning. He wasn't just taking the digital money. He was taking the physical. He was accelerating his timeline from Friday to tonight. He was moving. I pulled out the burner phone and sent a single text to Arthur Harding. He's moving. Leo Vance. He's at the house. He is liquidating physical assets from the floor safe. Harding's reply was instant. We're already in place. Tell us when. Harding hadn't just called the local police. The document about my incapacitation, combined with the wire fraud, had escalated this beyond a simple domestic dispute. He'd brought in the feds. They were in the neighborhood, waiting. I replied, now. He's opening the safe, but wait for his partner to arrive. I want them both. I walked out of the closet. I moved through the house, turning off all the lights, plunging the main floor into shadow. I walked into the living room, the one with the fireplace, the one where we'd hosted so many parties, so many lies. I sat in my father's favorite armchair, the one that faced the foyer and the stairs. I sat in the darkness, a ghost in my own home, and I waited. I took the set of keys from my pocket, the ones I had come back for, the ones that started all this. I leaned forward, the only sound the whisper of my coat. I placed the keys on the glass coffee table, directly in the center, where the light from the street lamp would catch the brass. Let him see them. Let him know I was home. He burst through the door, not like a husband, but like a thief. He was clutching a sheaf of papers, his face slick with sweat. He was halfway to the stairs, to his study, when his brain finally registered the impossible shadow in the armchair. He stopped, his foot hovering over the first step. He stared, his mouth half open. Eliza, he breathed. The papers fluttered from his hand. You are not in Denver. The street lamp cast a long, pale rectangle of light onto the floor, catching the brass of the keys on the coffee table. No, I said. My voice was low, and it carried through the cavernous silence of the house. I came back for my keys. His mind, the quick, reptilian mind of a con man, was already working, scrambling for a foothold. The shock evaporated, replaced by the mask of the concerned husband. It was his last, desperate performance. Eliza, thank God. He lurched toward me, his hands outstretched. Thank God you're home. I just found out. I was about to call you. It's Chloe. He was actually trying to play this. He was going to use the script he'd written for me. She's been lying to us, Eliza, to both of us. She's been moving money. She tried to frame me. It was so pathetic, so insulting. His masterpiece of a lie, and this was his final move. Shut up, I said. The words were quiet, but they had the force of a slap. He froze. Just shut up, Leo. His name, his real name. It hit the air and hung there, a final verdict. The mask did not slip, it shattered. The man I had married, the charming, supportive, loving man, dissolved in front of my eyes, and in his place was a pale, cornered stranger with terrified, furious eyes. He knew. It was over, as if summoned by his failure. The front door swung open again. Chloe. She ran in, breathless, her eyes wild. She saw Leo frozen in the hall, and then she saw me, sitting in the dark. She didn't hesitate. She didn't try to lie. She knew a sinking ship when she saw one. She pointed a shaking finger at the man she had been planning to run away with. "It was him!" she shrieked, her voice a raw, desperate sound. "It was all him. He made me. He said he was going to frame you. He said you were the one stealing, and he was taking the money to protect it. He made me do it." Leo didn't even look at her. His eyes were no longer on me. They were scanning the room, calculating angles, exits. He was a trapped animal, but he didn't lunge for me. He didn't lunge for Chloe. He roared. It was a guttural, terrifying sound, stripped of all his charm, and he dove, sideways, toward the antique bookshelf against the far wall. He wasn't running for the door. He was running for his last chance. His hand clawed behind a row of my father's leather-bound books, searching for something. I didn't move. I watched him. He ripped a small canvas duffel bag from the hidden alcove, his escape bag. He clawed at the zipper, his eyes bright with a final, desperate hope. "It's empty, Leo," I said. He stopped, his fingers on the zipper. "I found it this afternoon," I said, my voice as calm as the darkness. "In the crawl space above your closet. It was with your fake passport, the one with your real face, but a different name. It's all empty." He stood, rigid, the empty bag hanging from his hand. He was a monument to his own failure. He had nothing, no money, no escape, no lies left. And in that perfect, crushing silence, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a friendly chime. It was a hard, official, two-tone sound that echoed through the entire house. Leo's head snapped toward the door. He didn't have to answer. We heard the click of a key in the lock. Harding. The door swung open, flooding the foyer with the blue and red flashing lights that had been waiting, silently, at the end of the street. It wasn't just the Chicago police. It was two men in dark, severe suits. They stepped inside, their eyes sweeping the scene. The broken man holding the bag, the weeping woman by the door, me in the shadows. "Leo Vance," the taller one said, his voice holding all the authority in the world. They moved on him. They were efficient. They took the bag from his hand, turned him around, and cuffed his hands behind his back. Chloe was sobbing, a hysterical sound. As they pulled him toward the door, he stopped. He resisted, just for a second, and turned his head. He looked at me, and all the masks were gone. The charm, the lies, the fear. All that was left was a hatred so pure, so concentrated. It was almost stunning. "I used to love you," he hissed, the words full of venom, a last attempt to wound me. I stood up. I walked from the shadows into the flashing lights of the foyer. I walked past him, past the agents, past the woman he'd used. I stopped at the coffee table. I reached down and picked up my keys. The brass was cold and solid in my palm. I didn't look back at him. I looked at the open door, at the world waiting. "You should have known," I said, to him, to the house. to the memory of my father. I always come back for what's mine. I walked out the front door, leaving him in the ruins of the performance he had created. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect. Share your thoughts. Subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, and please like this video. If you want more stories like this to be heard, support us by hitting that hype button.